I first realised something wasn't right when I started playing the 2p penny fall machines as a very young girl. It was the first time that I kind of asked myself, what's wrong with me? As I got older, things got worse. And me and my mum's relationship, we were close through it, but then it got to a point that was all we had in common. And the gambling took over our lives. So I had debts everywhere. And the fact I felt so guilty at all the money that I owed my friends, the only way I can think to get this huge amount of money is to put what I've got left in my bank on, gamble what I've got left.
Kim, if you could go back and have a conversation with yourself at your lowest, what would you say?
I mean, I think the one thing I would say is it does get better.
Welcome to New Beginnings, a podcast exploring the impact of gambling harms on women's lives. I'm Natasha Devon, an author, broadcaster, and mental health campaigner. Together, we'll hear from those directly affected by gambling harms, learn about the challenges that can be faced in recovery, but most importantly, hear stories of hope. This show is brought to you by Bet No More UK, a charity providing peer-led services like New Beginnings, a women's only service. This podcast is part of the National Gambling Support Network. To find out more, visit betnomoreuk.org or contact the free National Gambling Helpline on 0808 8020 133 for 24/7 support. In today's episode, we'll explore the long-term emotional impact of growing up in a family where gambling was the norm, and ask the question, how do we break the cycle of trauma? As always, I'm joined by Lisa Walker, New Beginnings lead facilitator and expert by experience. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, Natasha.
Let's begin this journey of recovery and hope together. This week, we'll ask the question, how to break the cycle of codependency and addiction. We're joined by Kim from Scotland, who has faced extraordinary challenges stemming from gambling, introduced to the world of gambling as a child by her mother. Kim spent years battling the grip it had on her life. Now in recovery, she's using her experience to help others as part of Peer Aid, a service by Bet No More UK. Kim, welcome to New Beginnings.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. So let's start from the beginning. What was life like growing up for you and your brother?
So basically, since I was a child, my mum would take us to holiday parks throughout the UK. And to summarise it, she would kind of use these holidays to play the fruit machines. And me and my brother just thought it was the norm. She used to get us to guard the machines while she got change and stuff like that. I first realised something wasn't right when I started playing the 2p penny fall machines as a very young girl, and I would play the ones that didn't have like prizes in them. And my brother would always say, why are you playing a machine where you can't win like a keyring or something? But to me it was like, well, there's a lot of like 2p's sitting there that might fall kind of thing. And it was the buzz of hearing the coins clatter that kind of got me all excited. And he always found that quite strange. And it was the first time that I kind of asked myself, what's wrong with me? Why don't I want to play a machine that has key rings? So it kind of was my life. We went on holidays 4 times a year. And me and my mum, I grew up with my mum in the world of gambling, starting off at penny fall machines, going right up to way worse things that will come later in the podcast. But it was really difficult. My dad liked to drink, so my dad would be drunk in the caravan and me and my brother would be in the arcades. My mum would go to the over 18s bit, and me and my brother were just kind of bored. We didn't really know what to do. We just kind of we just felt, we'll ask mum for £1 to get some 2p's. And then I found this machine that was like a 2p fruit machine. So it was 2p a spin. And then I went to an arcade in Newquay in Cornwall, and I remember that I saw the fruit machines for the first time and I thought, what is this? Look at all these lights, the sounds, it looks really exciting. I didn't know what I was doing, so a man came over and taught me how to play the fruit machine, what buttons to press and everything. Basically from then I was hooked, and that's all I wanted to do was play the fruit machines rather than the penny falls. So I went on to 10p fruit machines, which are, you are able to go in as a very young child and play them, which I don't think is right. And I hope like that rules will be looked at and legislation will be looked at, because it is starting children gambling at a very young age. Those 10p fruit machines you can play from, 5, 6, they are available in most arcades. You don't have to be over 18 to play them. I don't think it's right. For me, that was my gateway.
Yeah, and we don't have, do you remember, or you might not actually, because you're probably a lot younger than me, but there used to be sweets that looked like cigarettes.
Yes.
That they would give to children. And now we don't have those, because we recognize that, if children are emulating that behavior, then later on that could lead them down a more harmful route. So it's a similar thing, isn't it, where you're sort of pretending to be a grown-up, and that's exciting in of itself. I wonder, how did it affect your relationship with your mum, the fact that you had this kind of shared passion, but also a harm?
Well, we didn't see it as a harm at the time. For us, it was just a bit of fun, which is what the famous last words, it's just a bit of fun. And as I got older, things got worse. When I turned 18, just everything went out the window at that point. We started going to bingo together. From just, going to arcades on holidays or weekends or whatever, it changed from that to I can go to bingo now, I can go to casinos now, arcades, everything changed. And we started off and Mum said, it'll be a laugh, we'll go to this like social club bingo. And then she was like, it's not exciting enough. So then we ended up going to gala bingo, and there was fruit machines there, and we'd find ourselves on the fruit machines. There's a lot of breaks at bingo, and I think it's for that purpose, to get people out on the slot machines, because I've been in many bingo halls and the amount of breaks is unreal. So yeah, it went from bad to worse. And me and my mum's relationship, well, we were close through it, but then it got to a point that was all we had in common. And the gambling took over our lives, and we thought it was our way of bonding. But actually it was doing us both a lot of harm. My mum's still an active gambling addict. I'm in recovery. But so she's, we never saw any harm in it. We would stay up till 4 a.m. gambling on computers till, I don't know why. It's just we would keep each other, like if someone won, they would give money to the other one. So we keep ourselves going for hours and hours. And it just got to a ridiculous point. I realised I didn't need to have my mum to gamble. I could do it myself. And so that was the next kind of option that I took. Instead of doing it with my mum as a way of bonding, I can do it myself. It became an isolating addiction rather than a social addiction. So.
And we'll come on to that in just a moment. But first of all, I want to bring in Lisa, because what Kim is describing here of almost her and her mum enabling each other, a lot of people would call that codependency, wouldn't they? Do you want to explain to us what codependency is?
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of sort of definitions of codependency and what codependency is. But I think in Kim's case, it was the fact that her mum introduced Kim from such a young age in the arcades, to gamble, and where they both grew up together. And then I think in the end, they were both, like Kim said, being able to sort of enable each other to gamble. And I think if you're codependent, it might be the other person is codependent, like Kim's mum might have been codependent on Kim in the end because she wanted Kim. She wanted probably Kim to draw her in so she could carry on gambling with Kim to get the excitement. And then if Kim won, Kim might be going, Mum, I'm going to transfer you some money now, or vice versa. And I think just, I hear a lot of people growing up a bit like me with my dad, in a household where I learned how to play 3-card brag by the age of 8 years old with pennies and 2p's. On my 18th birthday, my dad was taking me into a casino where I was, again, my dad gave me, I think it was 10 or 20 pounds to gamble with. And again, that being sort of, doing it together as well. You're with your family. So at the beginning, it starts off, well, this is a bit of fun. But then as the time goes on, you realise this isn't fun anymore.
And Kim, as well, you said that there was a point where you realised that you didn't actually need your mum in order to gamble, and you started doing it alone. How did your relationship with gambling change when you kind of took your mum out of the equation?
It got worse. It got way worse, to be honest, because I realised I could do it anytime I wanted to. I didn't have to literally go to her house to do it because it was a sacred thing. We would do it together in the living room. It was our thing, and things like she'd get on a bonus and we'd go and have a smoke, and it would just be this excitement and everything. And it was something that we done to bond. Thankfully, we don't have to do that anymore. We've really bonded recently, and I'll come on to that later and where I am today. But no, I realised I can do it myself. I don't need to travel down to be with her. I can do it in my house. I can do it on the laptop. It got way worse, and I also put on way bigger bets than I would have when I was with her. So instead of doing a 10p spin, which is what she'd done, so we would do it together, same stake and everything. When I was at home, I'd put on a £1 spin. Like, well, my mum's not here, so I don't have to play by her rules. I can do it how I want. And of course, that was way more destructive, way more money went in, way more emotional turmoil. It got worse. And my mum, she's still gambling to this day. So I have tried to say about recovery, but she has to find that path on her own.
Well, you have to want to do it yourself, don't you?
Yeah.
What you're describing, I think there's a lot of parallels with people's relationship with alcohol sometimes, that it begins as a social thing and you associate it with your friends or special occasions. And then there's this point where you realize, well, I can drink at home. And then suddenly it switches from being a social thing to being an antisocial thing because you're isolating yourself to kind of engage in this habit. I mean, Lisa, how common is it for you to hear from the people you work with that it started as social and then it becomes something else?
Oh yeah, it's definitely up there. I mean, there's so many women that say that, that perhaps, I don't know, for their 18th or 21st birthday, they started going to bingo with their friends, just as a social thing, on a Friday night, spending £10-20, on a game of bingo. But then as the weeks go on or the months go on, realising, well, hold on a minute, there's 10 breaks during the bingo and there's fruit machines everywhere. And then before they know it, they're not actually sitting with their friends, talking, having a glass of wine. They could then be using the fruit machines, or if it's men, perhaps men meeting up on a Saturday before the football. And then there's a couple of guys playing on the fruit machines, or they're doing football bets on their phone. And it's sort of seen as a social thing. You're all doing this social thing together. But then for somebody, they might overstep that and think, I need this more now. My bets are bigger than everybody else's. And then they start to distance themselves because they don't want people to see. I mean, I remember, I think I spoke about this on one episode, my dad taking me into a bookmaker's for the Grand National, sitting me on the counter and putting a 50p on. And I still hear people saying that their grandparents or their dad or their mum took them somewhere, like arcades, where it's seen as social, sitting there playing cards with your family, like we all do at Christmas, People think, oh, it's a social thing. But then all of a sudden, if you've got that gambling and you start to get that, I need to do this more, that's when it starts, to become harmful, and it can lead us down to some rocky pathways.
And you're on in your story, Kim, you're on this rocky pathway now. This is something that you're doing alone. You're putting on bigger bets. Was there a moment where you realized that this was something that was doing you harm and you needed to get help?
I mean, it took a long time. It was mostly through the problems. Like, I had problems with my ex. He was the one that said, like, you're on it all the time. You stay on till 4 a.m. And I never saw anything wrong with that. I'm just having fun. The thing is when I gambled, it was like I lost track of time. So I would say, oh, I'm going to come off at 1 and then I'm still on at 4, everything suffered. My relationship really did suffer because of my gambling addiction. So it was my ex that kind of opened my eyes to it, said, you're doing it too much, you're spending too much money on it. I used to work at Premier Inn and I would work split shifts. I would get up at 6, do the breakfast shift. There would be 4 hours in between like breakfast and dinner where you just kind of pottered about and done nothing. You couldn't really go for a sleeping in because you've got your uniform on. There's no point. You're going back out. So I would use that as an excuse to just say, oh, I'll just sit and have a flutter or whatever. I'd come back from work exhausted, feet killing me, in pain, but I would still have to get on to that computer. It was like it took over me. I was like, I need this. I've got to get onto this computer. And so that was when I first realised that I could go to GA, was when my ex said, I'm going to look for some help for you. He found Gamblers Anonymous, and there was one local to us, and so I started going there. The thing is that I said every week, oh, no gambling to report, but I was gambling. So I don't feel like I'd done it properly. There was things with, there was a certain man there that would flirt with me, and it kind of put me off GA. Not every GA room is like that, but for me, it stopped me seeking recovery, and then I ended up spiraling even more. My mum would call me after GA meetings and say, you've got to get on, this jackpot's going to go, and blah, blah, blah. I think the real thing was I wasn't ready at the time, and I felt like other people were pushing me into it, and I'd done it for them. But I was lying to myself, and the recovery only came properly when I wanted it to happen. And I realised at that time it wasn't for me, and the gambling, if anything, it just got even more worse from there. I had websites everywhere, accounts everywhere. I even went foreign as well and done European websites. I didn't like them because they would charge you for withdrawing and depositing. But at the time I was that desperate, and I was like, oh, it's fine. So I would open a new website and then self-exclude, because my ex would find out and he'd be like, get that closed down. And so I'd self-exclude that one. I'd open up another one. So that was this kind of constant, that's fine, I'll do what you say, but, in a few days, I'll find another one. So really, I never really got to that point where I was like, I need the proper help. It was the people around me that pushed me towards it. When I finally actually got the proper help, the recovery that's with me today, that was me. That was me saying, I'm done. I've got children now. Things matter. I can't do this anymore. I need to go and get the help. And I put my hands up and I said, I do need the help. And there was a certain day when everything changed and I realised I needed the help.
And was there anything particular that happened on that day, or was it a change that took place in your head?
So that day was probably the worst day in my gambling kind of life. That was a day that I harmed myself due to gambling, mostly due to debt. I was in a lot of debt with people, and my friends will probably be watching this, and I'm really sorry, but I did used to message my friends and ask for money and stuff, and I'll pay you back then, and that went out of control. I used to send like copy and paste messages and just hit them out to all of my friends, which is, looking back on it, it's really like sick. I'm disgusted in myself for that. But of course they'd be like, of course we'll help you, we'll give you the money and stuff. Of course I'd gamble the money. There was something that happened with a photographer. So my daughter was getting a photo shoot done, and the photo shoot was like £300-400. My ex gave me the money for it, and I gambled it. And I said to my photographer, like, can I give you like some now and some later? And then I gambled the money I was meant to give her later, and it all got out of control. I had so much debt. I took out an overdraft, maxed it out. I had debt with friends, personal debts. I still have a personal debt with a friend, which I'm slowly paying off. We're getting there. But yeah, so I had debts everywhere. And the fact I felt so guilty at all the money that I owed my friends who were there for me, who looked after me, and I owed them all this money. And I said to myself, like, I've got to get this money back. The only way I can think to get this huge amount of money is to put what I've got left in my bank on, gamble what I've got left. And so I emptied my bank account that night. I thought it would fix everything. Oh, my luck's going to change. Fate's going to have my back. It wasn't to be. So the guilt of all the money that I owed was pushing down hard on me. I was getting voicemails from my photographer. What's going on? Like, you still not sent the money? oh my God, this is like a company, this is bad. Like, so I just got overwhelmed. And that night I put my shoes on and went out my bedroom. We had a shop nearby us. I went to the shop and sat on the stairs. I've never felt more lost in my life. I felt hopeless. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. I owed money to everyone. I called my family, breaking down on the phone. They didn't really know how to help me. They tried their best, like, oh, maybe just try and do a payment plan, explain what's happened. And in my head, that wasn't good enough. I wanted to pay them back right now. And I couldn't. And the guilt got me so bad. I ended up breaking down, sitting on these stairs. And the stairs have there was like a metal railing you could hold on to. And so I grabbed it with both hands and I just smashed my head into the metal railing many times. I had a bruise on my forehead. But for me at that time, it was the only thing I could think of to deal with the pain. I just smashed my head off it. I was like, I hate myself. What have I done? What have I became? I've destroyed everything. Yeah, it was horrific. And it was that night when I broke down, I realised I really do need help now. This has went too far. I'm not going to be alive, basically, if I keep this up. I'm not going to have anyone left. So, yeah, it was
Thank
brutal.
you for sharing that, because I appreciate it can't be easy. I wonder, when you were in the headspace where you were thinking, I really need to do this now, and so your head's in the game, you're committed to recovery now. Did you have to distance yourself from your family?
So my family, yes, I did distance myself from them. That was due to other things. I knew that my mum would be a potential trigger in my recovery, so I didn't push her aside completely, but things like if I was spending time with her, I'd say to her, listen, I'm trying to, be clean. Please don't trigger me. Don't tell me about things that are going on online with gambling and that. She was like, no, I won't, love. And she stuck to her word. But then there's things like my dad would play roulette sitting next to me and I'd be like, I wish he knew, I did try and explain. He must have forgotten or something. I don't know. But no, I did. I did distance myself from them a little bit to focus on me and my recovery. I still spoke to them online and kept it very vague. Didn't really go into too much personal stuff with them. While I was on that journey, what mattered was me and me getting better. I became a little bit selfish in my recovery because I knew that if I don't dedicate myself to it 100%, it wouldn't work. I need to be fully committed, basically. And I knew that because when the times that I've tried to, go to GA in the past and I haven't been able to commit to it because I didn't want to. But this time I was like, no, I want this. And we moved to an area in Edinburgh where there's 2 meetings a week. Well, there's more than 2 a week, but the ones I could get to were really close. They were just a 20-minute bus journey away. So I'd get the bus Monday and Thursday nights. I would go to GA and I would feel very, very supported. The people in those rooms were amazing. WhatsApp groups. I then leaned on New Beginnings, and Lisa was actually my support worker. She would call me once a week. We would text just to check in, everything's okay. And that's what introduced me to Bet No More and where I am now, training to be a peer aid worker. So, yeah.
And that's amazing. I wonder, because what you described as being selfish is actually just having boundaries, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And Lisa, what would your advice be if somebody's thinking, I don't want to cut this person out because they're important to me and I need them in my life, but I need them to change the dynamics of our relationship with me in order to be able to be in recovery? How do you go about having that conversation?
Well, the thing that you said straight away is boundaries. With any relationship, if that relationship's going to be derogatory to your recovery, and it is so hard when it's a family member, especially your mum, who's your closest person, But any relationship, you have to, first of all, in recovery, and this is going to sound so selfish, but your recovery has to come first. When you're in recovery, you have to think about yourself, because if you're not well, you can't help everyone else. So everything that, you have to say to whoever, I'm in recovery and these are my boundaries. So if I'm with you, please could you not talk about gambling, or please could you respect that I am in recovery for either, you know, if it's drugs, alcohol, gambling, whatever addiction, please can we not speak about this, you know? This is the days that I go to my recovery. I'm not going to be about that evening. And just, you know, this isn't going to change. You know, I still love you, but I have to concentrate on myself. And then I think once everybody, and I think it's really hard as well for people that have just gone into recovery that are scared to open up, to tell their loved ones. Because again, are they going to disown me? The guilt, the shame around it, what are they going to think of me? But I really believe that once people understand that you're in recovery and that you're trying to better yourselves, I think most people do adjust. You know, it was a big adjustment for my family when I went into recovery. You know, my dad and my stepdad and my mum and my husband all went to Gam-Anon to find out more about the addiction because they didn't understand about a gambling addiction. And then when they did, it was like, right, we're not going to speak about this or we're not going to talk about that, and just to let me get on with, you know, my own journey. And I think boundaries is so important, to set them boundaries and what you will and won't accept. It's got to be, you know, you've got to have boundaries in place.
And I guess if somebody doesn't respect your boundaries, then you've got no choice, that you have to distance yourself for a little while.
100%. I mean, I was in a WhatsApp when I come back from Vegas after getting married in Vegas, and that's when I knew I needed help. I hit rock bottom, and I was in a WhatsApp group, you know, and some of the people were talking about, you know, we're going over Romford Dogs tonight, or we're going down the casino tonight, and I was like, I can't hear it. I cannot be around it. I'm just going to take myself off the group, and I took myself away from that situation. If there's a situation now where people talk about gambling and I'm in the room, I'll just say I'll either step out or I'll say I'm actually in recovery for a gambling addiction. Can we change the subject? Because it sometimes is triggering for people, and if people know, then hopefully people respect your boundaries and know that not to bring it up. You know?
And I mean, the theme of this episode of the podcast is breaking cycles, whether that's cycles of codependency or cycles of addiction. I wonder, Kim, if you could go back and have a conversation with yourself at your lowest when you were sitting on those stairs, where you probably couldn't even imagine that you would be where you are right now.
No.
What would you say to your past self?
I mean, I think the one thing I would say is it does get better. It doesn't feel like it then. It feels like your world's falling apart. You can't see straight. You can't see the next morning. The thing that got me through that night was my children. The thought of, I can't leave my children without a mum. That's what got me through that night. And I mean, what they say in GA is true, one day at a time. But that is what I would say. I would say to my past self, this will get better. You'll be in a place you never dreamed of being in, you know. You will be able to turn this hurt and this devastation into something positive. And that's why I came to do this podcast, because it means so much to me that those who are suffering are not suffering alone, and that they reach out and they get the help, because it's so important, and the help is out there. You just need to take that first step. And once you get into a GA room, or you speak to the primary gambling care service, who were great with me, you will feel like you have someone that has your back. And I think that's the most important thing, because when I was sitting on those stairs and I felt so isolated, I felt no one had my back. My ex didn't understand. My family had their own things going on. I felt isolated. And that's what I would say. I would say to my former self, take it one day at a time. It's going to get better. Trust me, it's going to get better. And to be honest, I think I would give her a cuddle.
Yeah.
Because she was in quite a state that night. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's a really powerful story, and for being here today. I really appreciate it. That is all for this episode of New Beginnings. Thank you also to Lisa for your insight, as always.
Thank you, Natasha.
If you've been affected by any of the topics covered in today's episode, please contact the National Gambling Helpline on 0808 8020 133 for 24/7 support. To learn more about the New Beginnings programme, visit betnomoreuk.org. If you found this episode helpful, please like, comment and share. You can find New Beginnings wherever you listen to your podcasts, or you can watch our episodes on our YouTube channel, Bet No More UK. I'm Natasha Devon. Thank you for coming along on this exploration with me as we uncover the complexities of gambling and its far-reaching effects. See you next time.